everyone, I'm Danny Roddy of DannyRoddy.com, and today I'm talking with Karen Mcc of VisionAndAcceptance.com and author of Eat Something Sweet, You'll Feel Better. Today, Karen and I will discuss our introduction to Ray Peat's work, our experience with the community, and why at the end of the day, Ray Peat doesn't want you to follow him. He wants you to stand toe-to-toe with him and live an authentic life. In addition to thanking Karen for talking with me today, I'd like to thank my patrons for making this show and all of the content I produce possible. If you would like to become a patron, go to patreon.com/DannyRoddy. Without further ado, here is the show. What attracted you to Ray, and were you like aware of other philosophies around diet? Like I guess I started writing about Ray in late 2010.
Okay.
And it seemed like I was posting his quotes on Facebook in like 2011. And then that steadily just got more and more and more popular. I was writing articles, and this was, to me, it's just like, it was paleo. Paleo was everything, ketogenic diets, low carb. And I dissociated myself from that scene. And then Ray got big on Facebook, and a private group took place. And I started just talking to a lot of people, but when you were one of the people I would intermittently talk to, and I always thought you had great insights on the thing. So I remembered our interactions. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's been a few years, and
I know time flies.
And you were one of the people that it was sometimes painful to hear what you would say, because it would cause me to reorient myself.
Well, that's how Dr. Peat is in a way too. Like, you almost need a warning label, because he can open your eyes to things and then you just see them everywhere. He's done that with me. I think that's the effect of a new perspective, like it lights a candle. And I think too we're sort of jumping ahead a little bit, but like when I think about the groups, I think if you're in your right mind, you don't want consensus. Consensus is overrated. You want variety. But if you're scared and you need security, then you think that everybody agreeing on the same thing buys you that security. Like, for some reason, there's that connection. And I think that new perspectives are very, very important, because they open your eyes to things and they can help other people open their eyes. And sometimes you might have a question about nutrition, but it gets answered by another area of life that you explore.
I came from my experience on like paleo and low carb, and having such a bad experience. Uh-huh. I felt really like self-righteous with Ray's ideas. And I think that led, in the beginning, at least, like a rocky period where I definitely didn't understand what Ray was about. Okay. And I still don't understand, but I'm trying. And but like our constant interaction and just reading more, and like I said, the philosophical things, and maybe my change of heart and personality over time too. Uh-huh. Like when you were posting vision and acceptance articles, they mean way more to me now than they did at the time. So I think you were emotionally just ahead of me at every step. And when did you create Vision Acceptance, and what was the motivation?
Well, I'll give you a little bit of my background. I was a personal trainer, so I was interested in nutrition and health. And I could see, like, in the gyms that people would just train the same way. And I wanted to go about it more scientifically. So I started studying Ian King, and he has a very scientific method for approaching training. And there's many, many different methods, but I got locked into him, and I could just see that it caused me a lot of problems in the gym because other people weren't doing it and it looked a little bit weird. So that sort of got me in the habit of thinking outside the box a little bit and being willing to pay the price for it. Because you always have to pay the price if you want to break away from the security of conformity. What ended up happening, though, is I was diagnosed with panic disorder because I would get what I thought were panic attacks. But now I realize that it was like extreme releases of adrenaline because my blood sugar was all over the place. So at the time, they don't discuss your mindset. They don't discuss what you're eating. They don't discuss if you're eating. They don't discuss your activity level. They just say, here, take these pills. You know, they're drug pushers. So they gave me these benzodiazepines, and benzodiazepines, they're very, like, you require almost like a degree in biology to understand their effect on your body. So people get stuck on them. And if you look at all the people that die or, you know, like all the movie stars like Michael Jackson and all these people, they always have benzos in their system because it is very effective to make you feel calm. But at the same time, your body just gets adapted to it very quickly, and then you can go into something called tolerance withdrawal, or if you don't take it every 6 hours, you go into half-life withdrawal. So that just wreaks so much havoc on your nervous system. So you start suspecting, like deep down, like, oh my God, like how the hell do I get off this crack? It's not even helping me. Like I'm still getting breakthrough anxiety. Little do you know that's the withdrawal, the tolerance withdrawal and the half-life withdrawal. So it's, you know, it's very technical as I throw these words around, but what ends up happening is it's very, very difficult to get off of it. So you're just taking it because you can't get off of it. So I didn't know what to do. And one day after being on it for like years and years, and it wasn't even helping, I just felt so bad. I was just in withdrawal every day without knowing it, and still trying to go to work and function and getting panic attacks anyway. And so I just said, well, I'm just going to get off. I was on such a little amount because I was seeing a chiropractor and he was anti-drugs, and I was just trying to cut back as much as I could, but it was sort of hurting me cutting back like that because I didn't know how to do it. So what ended up happening is finally, thank God, I found somebody that understood titrations, and I had to do like this crazy titration that took months just to get off like one pill. It was crazy, but that's the only way. It's the only way, or else you just feel so sick, and it's crazy. So my nervous system was like obliterated, and to make matters worse, as I would go to medical doctors and they wouldn't know what to do. And then I'd go to holistic doctors and they wouldn't know what to do because medical doctors don't want to admit the drug is doing what it's doing because they're prescribing it to everyone. And holistic doctors don't take pharmacology, so they can't help you either. So I would always start my story the same. I'd always be like, yeah, I was on these drugs and then I got off of them and then I feel really sick. And then they'd be like, okay, get your fillings out. You know what I'm saying? Like you have the information as the patient if they could just listen to you, but they are hammers and you're a nail. So it'd be like, okay, do a fast, if it was a chiropractor, come in for adjustments. So it was just really, I was just so stuck. And, I did Weston Price and I got a lot out of that. I went to a Weston Price conference, but I was just really, really, really stuck. And my sleep was just, I should have been studied by a scientist for how little sleep I was getting in all these years. And I wasn't working or anything. It was just like I was being sick full time. So I knew this guy from the Weston Price group, and he started telling me about Ray Peat, and he had sleep problems too. And I was low carb because everybody was against sugar, the holistic people, the medical doctor people, everybody. So basically, he started telling me about Ray Peat, and then I think I was looking at his pictures and he had a picture of like shrimp and orange juice. And I just remember that orange juice looks so damn good. And so I didn't have to like read articles or anything. I just got the basics and the next morning I'm like, okay, here goes nothing. And I drank the orange juice with my breakfast, and I didn't have like that post-breakfast crash, and I'm like, oh my God. Seeing is believing. So I just started going on the Facebook group. It was really small at the time. And it was really interesting because I think all these people had studied him and they never got together to discuss him. And it was just very interesting, these people that had studied it for years on their own, what they took out of it versus another person. It's pretty fascinating. So then from there, the group grew and grew and grew, and I was moderator for a little bit, and then I was emailing Peat a little bit because they're like, he'll email you back, and it's like, you just want to see if it works, So I'm like, oh my God, he did email me back. This is incredible. And I was just so like stuck on that. I couldn't get past that because I think my health situation was so extreme and I was on the sidelines of life for so long, like observing and concluding, and it was really hard. But in a way, if something's not working, you can't lie to yourself and you just have to admit it and be like, what's next? Like, that's true empiricism. Like, you have to just listen to your body. So I just felt like this man was very, very different. He had true compassion. Like, he really did. And so that's when I started emailing him and like asking him about answering our emails. And I just was locked. He answered like a small answer the first time and I couldn't let it go. I'm like, no, but really, So then he mentioned Carl Rogers and stuff like that. So
I remember being between starch eating and then zero-carbing.
Okay.
And I didn't know there was anything different. And I remember seeping into like a dark depression.
Okay.
Because I knew that both ways, I had tried both and neither was getting me to where I wanted to be. And then reading Peat was so fun and interesting because I was like, oh my God, a different way. And I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah.
And reading his articles was one thing because I didn't understand anything he was saying except he was mentioning a hormone I was interested in. But hearing him talk in the early days with Josh Rubin I was like, okay, here's somebody who's super knowledgeable. And like you said, the answering emails thing was just huge because that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, He was very unique and it's not just answering the emails, it's answering the emails in a way that is respectful to you and your orienting system, your internal navigation system. And like, have you tried this? It's not just answering them, it's answering them with respect to that. And he's extremely validating. And so I just, when I was moderator of the group, I wanted to keep things interesting and I'd post his articles so people would read it directly and then, maybe try to discuss it. But I'm like, maybe he'll do an interview if I ask him. And then I told him, I'm like, oh, there's this many people in the group. Will you, can I ask you these questions? And he's like, yeah. So that's when I did the first interview, the 10. So it was really just meant for the group. And then that was before I had the blog.
I completely forgot about those, but those are two of some of the just best reads. My dad said he didn't really understand why I liked him so much, and I don't know how, but he read the first one, the part where he thought he said he liked Ivan Illich's disestablishment of medicine, and that's what he wanted his work to be a part of. Like, my dad was like, okay, I get it now.
Really? That's cool. Yeah, he's very, very different. And then what happens when I saw his answers for that, I would just like email him my thoughts. And I just thought, like, I really think that he has kept me out of a mental institution because I would have these observations about life. And I like to observe things firsthand. I don't like to read a lot of other people's work because I feel if you go in your backyard and you open your eyes, you'll come at it at a different way. You'll hit upon it in different wording, but you can hit upon like the main themes in life. And so he has this way of validating you and being like giving you a link to something or showing you a part of his newsletter, and it just really, really validates you, and that's very healing.
Did you think that was a problem with the groups when somebody would explain their experience? Other people would think that, hey, I'm probably going to have the same experience too, and then it would kind of mislead people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that first of all, let me say that there's a lot of similarity to all the groups. All the groups sort of have the shadow, and everything has good and bad in the world. Everything has a shadow, and sometimes the brightest light has the darkest shadow. And it's your job to sort of explore what could be in the shadow. What are the pitfalls of anything? And I think that if you're on various groups, you see they all sort of get the same weaknesses where they find that there's security and consensus. I'm not picking on any one group. I'm just saying in general, like that's sort of the nature of the group, if that makes sense. But I feel that I would email a lot of people in any group I've been on. Like I always set up a dialogue with people away from the group because I'm a very curious person. And I started seeing that people never tell the full story. You see what I'm saying? Like people always hold back. And if we could just be honest, we'd all move towards healing a little bit, better or faster or easier. So like one person had this amazing healing story and I got to know them better, and they focused on what they did to heal, and it was nutrients. But then when I talked to the person, they had like all this amazing financial support and family support and friend support for what they went through. But they didn't speak to that. And I even asked them, like, don't you think that affected your healing? Because with what I've been through, it's very hard for people to understand the whole benzo thing. They zone out after the first mention of like half-life withdrawal, and it's very isolating. But this person had so much support, and they didn't mention that. And I'm like, I really think that has a lot to do with your healing. But if you want to attribute it to your nutrients fully, then go ahead. What can I do? I can't out you. So the point is that I started collecting in my head like healing stories. And I remember when I first started studying nutrition, there was this girl that I know, and she told me, you should talk to my friend because you know so much about nutrition, and she's bedridden and blah, blah, blah. Well, come to find out, a month later, she was doing amazing because she left her husband. And I'm like, what? Like, how can that be? She doesn't know about bad fats yet. You know what I mean? And so I couldn't wrap my brain around it because we think of healing in terms of nutrients. But what really clarified things for me a lot was reading Selye's book, Stress Without Distress. And after that, I really, really started focusing on things that, not just nutrition, because sometimes that can create stress. But I would always see in all these healing stories, there's always something that people don't say because they feel like it's not going to be accepted, or people will make fun of it, or they'll think it's weird, or to misattributed.
Was that the beginning of when exactly did you leave the groups and kind of do your own thing? Because I remember one day being like, oh, Karen's not on Facebook anymore.
Well, I go on and off of Facebook, but I don't know. Like I think Peat said. He said in an interview that it's important to be surrounded by happy people or something like that. And I feel like if you want to heal, you have to make what I call big moves, and you have to maybe like turn off the computer or, break away from the herd, or, get out of the bad relationship or quit the shitty job or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? It's different for every person, but I feel that is really, really important to healing. And I think that our illnesses teach us something about the world and life. And if it was just about, well, you lack these nutrients, you know what I'm saying? That's sort of like not an interesting story. And nobody's going to make a movie out of like, Danny healed himself with eggshell and the carrot, like that's not like the human story. The human story is about getting to know your calling and what you bring into the world that's very special and how that's been suppressed. And I think in Pete's interviews, he talks about that like better than anyone else. Like he really talks about what can make you sick.
I mean, that's just so prevalent in Ray's work. However, a lot of the times we get a reduced version of what he's talking about, and I'm fully able to take some of that blame for my early writings about his work. And I'm pretty sure I coined the word Peat-Tarian, which got changed to Peatarian.
Okay.
And I'll totally take that blame. However, it's obviously a huge issue because I think I emailed him once and I was like, hey, I'm super sorry for even writing the Peat Whisperer, which I thought really made his huge effort into a minor effort. And a lot of people were reading that. And I thought I kind of shifted his views into like a reductionism.
Well, I think that the Peat Whisperer, I've referred to it literally like 100 times. And you have a way of making things sound understandable. Like, to go from Mercola to reading Dr. Peat's work, I mean, that's a tall order.
Huge investment.
Like, you need to learn his language, and he will make you smarter. Like, he will literally make your IQ points go up if you study him or engage with him. But the one thing about healing is or working out or anything in life is like a reasonable rate of progression. You can't jump ahead. There has to be progression. You can't disrupt homeostasis so much, or you just create stress. So you can't downplay your role. Everybody has a role, and we were just all learning together. So I like the Peat Whisperer.
Well, it didn't help because I accumulated a lot of his newsletters, I think, after that.
Uh-huh.
And at one point, he mentioned the horse whisperer, and he commented how, like, you need a horse whisperer because the horse is retarded. And I was like, oh my God, like, what have I done?
Well, we are retarded. I mean, he talks about institutions and authoritarianism, and that's why if you are sick and you're only focused on improving your individual health, then you're missing the big picture. You're missing how we're all sick and how we're all, retarded or whatever it is. But we can heal, we can get better, we can move ahead. So I just think, like, if a person's sick and all they care about is just sick people always want to go back. They always want to go back to when they weren't sick, and you can't go back. You have to go forward. And when you go forward, you're going to be deepened by your experience. You're going to be someone different, and you're going to hopefully have learned compassion and see how we're all in this together. We're all sick with the same thing. And Peat shines a light on what that is.
There was a point in which I talked to you and I said I wasn't really interested in his ideas on philosophy or authoritarianism. In fact, I didn't even know what authoritarianism was until I started reading Peat some more. Uh-huh. But at one point I did realize that the way I was talking was progressing myself as an authority. And like all the things you mentioned, and I think you really hit it home in your article, Stop Repeating. Did you feel like that was a major problem with the groups, like an era of authority?
It's not like to pick on any groups or anything like that. Like, I
guess we could just say forums in general, because I had lots of experience with forums before I ever heard about Ray Peat.
Yeah.
And when I think about them, they were poisonous because, like I mentioned earlier, I would read about somebody's experience with something and be like, that's my experience too. I'm not going to use that thing because I don't want to have happen what so-and-so did. And it would just really warp my perspective on what I should do or what I shouldn't do. Uh-huh. And reading Ray was the first time I ever read just one person's work and toyed with it without getting all of these other inputs. Mm-hmm. And I'm torn because obviously without Ray Peat forum, I would never found Georgie. However, there are lots of times where I'll skim through a thread and be like, what this person really needs to do is just not go on this forum.
Right. I mean, they're addicting a little bit because it's hard to face life, and we always look for a distraction. And when you're healing, you're finding out who you are, and you have to you're trying to like reoccupy your center that was sort of taken from you by the teacher or the minister or whatever it is. And you're sort of detoxing that, and it's really uncomfortable. And sometimes you feel depressed before you feel better. Like, you're going up and down all over the place. It's a very courageous thing to try to heal rather than stay stuck, or rather than turning your power over to a medical doctor who has all the answers, who is so certain, but when something's very certain, then they're locking out possibilities. I feel like, you want to be distracted. You want to go on the groups and find alliances and enforce maybe your bad habits in a few ways, and then you meet people that are interesting, and it's just a very complex thing. But there's definitely pitfalls, and I feel like you'd think like the Peat groups would be more aware of these pitfalls, but again, sometimes the loudest voice is the most immature voice. And the people that are older and wiser, they know some things you have to learn on your own, and it isn't certain. And certainty and loudness seems to triumph over subtlety and discernment, and letting people do their own thing, sort of.
And you mentioned that in your article with Ray, understanding that and leaving enough room in his writings for personal interpretation.
Yeah, I mean, he says something like, if there's talk of a protocol, then they have me mistaken with an authority.
Yeah,
like he really, really speaks to the empirical experience.
I think that was in the first interview you did with him.
Yes, and
the Think, Perceive, Act.
Yeah, there's this one email that he sent me, and it says, remembering yourself as the one whose future is always in question, in doubt, and open, you know where youthful energy lives. And I think it starts to feel as though gravity is pulling for you, making things roll towards you. Okay, that's a big statement. Your future is in doubt and open. So that means like everything, whether it's like a supplement, like nothing's certain, nothing is sure. And that's the beauty of life. That's the mystery of life. And that's where you need the courage. But I think that we have been indoctrinated that life should not be struggle. Like from every single commercial. Like if you only bought this product, you'd feel no pain. You know what I'm saying? And life is struggle, life is pain. And if we were just honest about the struggle, then people put so much time and energy into pretending they're not struggling or hiding the struggle that it's just a loss of energy. It's what they're focusing on, and they're losing time they could be spent focusing on other things.
I like how you listed a few things of what you thought, quote, peating would really mean. Mm-hmm. And it would be of service to your fellow humans, asking for nothing in return. Mm-hmm. Studying firsthand other scientists and philosophers and making interesting connections. And you'd write and paint and have a strong connection to nature as well as a value of humor. And I just gave me chills because I thought it was like, I think of Ray when I think of all those things.
Well, I was describing him. I mean, you don't necessarily have to do those things, but I think that people have a calling, and I think that Ray Peat's calling is what he's doing and what he's modeling. You can't lead someone to a place that you haven't been to. And everybody has something special to bring.
Did you feel like your gravitation? Do you feel sensitive? Like I feel when I was like paleo and low carb, like you mentioned earlier, like am I crazy? Like am noticing these things? I felt like I had lots of that like built up, like noticing certain things when I like did things. And then finally, when I heard Ray talk about things, I was like, oh my God, like somebody else notices those things too. And for instance, like some of the people I consider like really healthy just from consistently throughout, I've known some of them, like I'll ask them like, do you ever notice your hands and feet being cold? And they'll be like, no, I've never even noticed that. But it's like a lack of sensitivity or like awareness about their life.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just start waking up a little bit, and that's another reason why people don't want to do this work and heal, because then you have to sit in this discomfort until it shifts. Whether it's, there's a lot of things to be uncomfortable with, a lot. This world is pretty messed up because of certainty, because you know what I'm saying? Certainty just is the authoritarian mindset. And that's why on the groups, it's just what we've lived, just going into the school system and stuff like that. A very good video. I mean, it's been around for a couple of years, but it's that guy, Ken Williamson, I think is his name, or what's his name? Is
he dark hair and he quotes Selye a lot?
No, he does this TED talk about the education system, and I forgot. I know it's like Sir Ken something, but maybe I could give you the link later. But he really talks about, what the educational system does to you in a very fresh and interesting way. Like there's one answer and it's in the back of the book. Like he says that's what we've been trained under. So that's conformity. So people are coming from that. Nobody's unaffected from these things. there's no corner of our society that remains unaffected where you can go and have this ideal nutrition group discussion. Like everybody's healing from this. So it's going to look like authoritarianism is winning sometimes, and other times it's going to look like some of the ideas that Peat's shedding light on is gaining more traction.
He was the first person I thought, like, okay, you can still be a sensitive person. I always thought, I guess, health was like perfection before I started reading Ray's stuff. And he just shifted what I thought was healthy into like a new way of thinking, I guess. Like you can still eat a food that has like a powerful allergen in it and get diarrhea or something. Like that wasn't something I guess I was ever focused on. Like before that, I thought it was just being Marxism or having abs or something like that. And I felt like that was a freeing thing, knowing that Ray was a sensitive person and you could still be an incredibly higher functioning person that's really smart and speaks really well and writes a lot.
Well, there's this one article I read, and it was about all these old people that had jobs that were really important that they loved, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg and stuff like that. And they were really old and they're still highly, highly functioning. And I don't think anybody mentioned nutrition. There's other things that affect your health. And like, that's hard for people to understand. That was hard for me to understand. And I was so focused on the nutrition, on the nutrition, on the nutrition. And then to look past that, that's what sometimes people who are focused on nutrition don't want to see, is that there's other things you can, like if you put all your focus into nutrition, what about being creative? That's very healing. What about doing the job of your dreams?
This touches on, I'm not going to say it right, but medicatrix naturae.
Yeah, which is the idea that your body can heal itself if you leave it alone. It's like a very ancient concept, and I hit upon it when I was studying canon, who influenced Selye. And so that's one thing that I was telling you about before. Like when you read these old timers, they have a narrative that also sort of has parallels to life, that you can learn about your body, but learn about life too. And I feel like modern medicine does not have that. If you are sick and you go to the doctor, they feed into this whole emphasis on the minutia, because they're like, let's just get that test score different. Here's a drug. Not like, let's discuss your life. Let's discuss what influenced you, the world. And so reading canon or Selye, they all sort of bring parallel, in Peat as well, they have these parallels to life in general. And I thought that reading about homeostasis and not disrupting that too much and just trusting the wisdom of the body was a really important concept. And I think May Wan Ho said something about, you have to be careful when you're studying something that you don't, with a slide or whatever it is, that you don't harm it. And so if you're the experimenter and you're experimenting on yourself, you have to be careful. You have to treat that complex body, which is still a mystery to us. It's like so complex and amazing. You have to have respect for it. You can't start throwing all these supplements at it, if that makes sense. Because anytime you use a supplement, it's a potential remedy, but it's also a potential homeostasis disruptor in a negative way, where you could cause stress. And you see that happening on the groups. Like, I did this, and this. I'm like, God, your body didn't know what hit it. You need a reasonable rate of progression. Your body needs gentleness. So I think these are important concepts that get lost when we're trying to hit upon that perfect supplement to take away everything that's wrong with us.
My favorite thing that you said in that article is just the big picture thing, and that lacking from some aspects of groups and forums, but that Ray tries to get across. I guess it's confusing coming from different styles of eating and supplementing, and then to Ray. And you hear about supplements, so obviously you'd want to take them. But I mean, hopefully us talking about it and trying to progress the complexity of everything will help some other people, because I know I was just completely lost. And then it took multiple conversations with you and continued reading to understand all these different aspects of health that I was just unaware of.
Like, I'm not a Ray Peat fan. He's a teacher, and he doesn't want fans. He wants people to stand toe to toe with him. And some people, you don't want to put him on a pedestal because that's not fair to him. But we need someone older and wiser, not to have the answers for us, but to sort of show us the map a little bit or validate us or to give us unconditional positive regard. It's very powerful. And that I always tell people, I'm like, out of all of Peat's work that's helped me the most, it's the emails, because then I started feeling like less depressed about what I was seeing and thinking that I'm not crazy. Like, he sees this stuff too, and he validated, and that relieved a lot of stress. And then I can focus on other things and I could sleep better. And we all need a mentor or somebody to guide us. You asked me before about the blog, and I wanted to mention it because one of the reasons that I started the blog was to create awareness. And I don't know if you know, or if the people listening to this know Éric Lépine, but I had read some of his stuff and I felt like we had the same values and similar goals. So we sort of started writing together. And the one thing I didn't want to do is put a lot of noise out there. I only wanted to write when I was inspired, because I think there's too much noise. And so I thought of the idea of inviting people to write for the blog. And I really feel that creativity is very, very, very healing. And what I didn't realize is that it's really hard for people to be creative. Like, it's really, really, like, a lot of people are like, I want to write for the blog, and then they're just don't have the confidence. But I feel creativity and creating things is really helpful for health. And I feel like after a while, when I did the blog, I realized the people that are reading this blog are already aware. I don't have to increase their awareness. It's how do you deal with awareness? When you start learning all this stuff, this crazy stuff about the world, how do you balance that with being happy and having energy to do things? So I really wanted to have a place, and anybody that's listening to this can write for the blog. I just want to extend that out because I feel creativity is very healing. I feel it's an antidote to the authoritarian mindset, and I feel like it's so easy to destroy, but to create is much harder. And that's why, like, even if someone hated the repeating article, fine, come write. Like, here's 1,000 words for you to express your point of view from your own vantage point about what you think about eating. That's much harder than to just tear down what somebody else did. But here's your own place. I really wanted to give people a place where they had an equal opportunity to have their voice heard instead of just one person having all the answers. So I just want to put that out there in case anybody wanted to write for the blog. You're more than welcome to.
David Lynch, if you look, search him on YouTube, an idea, and he talks about having an idea and how amazing it is, and that you'll get them like from nowhere, and then they'll just like grow.
Yeah.
And I can completely resonate with that because there have been times where I couldn't think of anything, and then having deadlines for doing work was torturous. But when you get like a cool idea, it can be one of the most like joyous things ever. And then when you're finished with it, it can be sad too. But I totally understand.
Yeah. It's like postpartum or something after you do a big project, because you really put your mind, body, and soul into it. But I just feel it's very invigorating, and you learn a lot about yourself. And I think that, like, I wrote that fiction book about healing, and a lot of the ideas I'm talking about tonight, I tried to work into the book. I feel like everything's a story. What Dr. Peat talks about, it's a story. And if you hit upon the right story, then it can really, really move you forward. But if you hit upon like a reductionist certain story that doesn't leave a lot of room for who you are, and it's not going to heal you, it's going to keep you stuck. But writing that book really, really helped me to heal a lot. And I just want to make people laugh. And if you liked any of the things I'm talking about tonight, then you may want to check it out, because I use a story format because I think that's the best way to reveal an idea or discuss an idea.
Can you give everybody details to your book and your website?
The website is visionandacceptance.com, and the book is Eat Something Sweet, You'll Feel Better.
Karen, thank you so much for talking with me today.
Yeah, my pleasure, Danny. Thank you so much for giving time and space to some of these ideas. I think it's really going to help some people.
That's going to conclude this week's episode of Generative Energy. I'd like to thank Karen again for talking with me, along with my patrons for their support of the show and making all of the content I make possible. And without them, none of this could happen. So sincere thank you to my patrons. Donating $1, $2, $3, any 25 cents, anything is amazing. So I sincerely appreciate it. Please leave your comments and constructive criticisms in the comment section. And thanks again for the support of the show. Hit that like button if you're on YouTube. And thanks again for listening. The show, as always, has been so fun to do, and to talk with Karen and Georgie on a regular basis is pretty amazing. So I'm extremely fortunate. Thanks again for listening and supporting the show, and I'll talk to you guys soon.